This is Tristan Cook, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen. We are back once again on the only Dynasty show that is certified Inferno. It's the Dynasty Hot Seat. We're back again for another 2025 Rookie Mock Draft. Hey, nice to see you, and nice to see Tristan Cook in the house as well. Love it when we get a first-time guest on. Tristan, if you don't know, is the Devi lead over at the amazing team at Dynasty Nerds. Also runs the program C2C. We were chatting off camera about that, Tristan. That sounds like a hell of a lot of fun. It is great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, that league is pretty much a full-time job. We have 4 commissioners in charge of it. We do a recruiting show every week. It is a full-time commitment, but one of the most fun leagues I've ever been in. And then, just on top of that, it's the busy season for rookie content. So that's always going along, and can't believe it's already April and the draft is just around the corner. So we're finally here, and we can, immediately look at 2026 and the next class.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing, isn't it? This is where people start going like, to be honest, I'm all about the 2027 class. I'm even further ahead of that, Tristan. Those guys are insane, right? So I can't wait to dig into those. But we'll chat about these 2025 prospects to start with. So we've got our draft board up here. Hey, welcome along, by the way. If you're a long time listener, you may have noticed, hey, Mags, what's this? New look in the Dynasty Hot Seat. You're damn right. Let me know what you think about it. It's not quite perfect yet, but leave a comment in the video if you think you'd make any changes, or if you think, hey, this is perfect, leave it the way it is. So, Tristan, you're on the clock. You've got every single pick, which is great. We're going to blast through 2 rounds here. This is Superflex. Where are you thinking with the first pick?
So I'm always a person that would say that highly drafted quarterbacks should go at the top of Superflex drafts, even when there's a outstanding talent at a different position. This is a year that I am really debating whether or not I want to follow that strategy. I'm pretty high on Ward and Sanders, but I do feel like this might be a year where I'd be willing to take Genty at 1, just because he seems like he's going to be, that much of a step up from, the running back landscape in the NFL, and he's clearly the one on his in his class. So I begrudgingly would take Genty if I had 1. I probably would try to trade it to somebody if I just had this pick that I knew really wanted him there. Not because I don't like him, but just because I think that the value, you should take a highly drafted quarterback there. And unless I was dying for a running back and my team was ready to contend, I don't think drafting a running back that early is going to really help your team in the long run. So I think Genty would be my pick, but I would probably be trying to trade that pick for a big haul instead of make the pick and then have a young running back on a team that's not ready to compete.
Yeah, so if we maybe put it in comparison to if we plug Genty into last year's class, would you still be taking him after guys like Caleb Williams and obviously Jaden Daniels in 2020 like foresight, but or hindsight, sorry. Would you still be taking those 2 ahead of a guy like Genty just based on their maybe better profile than Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely take them ahead of Genty. I would it really is a tough call for me. I think that I probably personally would take the 2 quarterbacks this year even over Genty, but I think that would be is going to be a very frowned upon strategy because I know people are a lot further down on the quarterbacks this year, which is again why I think I would take Genty here if I had to make a pick, just because I think that you could get the quarterbacks later. Whereas if you don't take Genty at 1, he's going to. There's no getting him later in a draft. So I think you'd almost have to take him at 1, and even if you don't want him for based off of your roster construction or something, you could try to trade him. But I think you kind of have to take him at 1. And in last year's class, he'd probably be like the 3rd or 4th pick for me. would be my guess, just thinking out, off memory.
Yeah. Tristan, that is, very, very consensus first pick. Obviously, you're talking about those quarterbacks. Before we get into your potential quarterbacks, Tristan, I've got some bad news for you, unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
Do you know that 78% of people watching this video right now not subscribed to the Dynasty Hotseat? What do you have to say to these jerks?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Hit that little subscribe button.
Exactly. It's written down below. Hit on it. If you're on your TV, you press up or something. A lot of people watching on the TV. I don't know how to work YouTube on my TV. You press up and then it's just, you'll figure it out. Figure it out if you're on the TV. So we hopefully people. Yeah, we're almost at 1,000 as well, which is really cool. That has been a long ambition for the show to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's what we want to see. Help me get there by clicking on that button, and don't be a part of that 78%. So let's move on, Tristan. Let's go on to pick 2. You mentioned these quarterbacks before. Is this where we're going to see the first quarterback come off the board at pick 2?
It is. For me, that's Shedeur Sanders. He's my top quarterback, which I think is probably not the consensus, which again is also why I think that if I had, the first pick, I could get Shedeur Sanders way later than I could get Ashton Jeanty, and I would take him at 1 if in a vacuum. So for me, it's Shedeur Sanders. I think that they're both really good prospects, so it's not that I dislike Ward. I think Sanders is a more accurate quarterback. He's got a strong enough arm. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm in the way that some of the quarterbacks in the NFL do, and Ward seems to be on that higher end. But he's got plenty of arm strength. He can place the ball into just the tightest windows. I think he has plenty of mobility. There's been a narrative that he's not going to be able to be mobile in the pocket or move around enough or use his legs at all. And I just don't really get it. He's not, Jaden Daniels level athleticism, but you don't need that. He's plenty mobile. I think it was 6 of the top 12 quarterbacks in fantasy last year had fewer than 300 or 400 rushing yards. So you don't need to be a super mobile quarterback to be a successful fantasy quarterback. I went to the University of Colorado, so I've seen him play at home every game for the last 2 years. And, granted it's against college opponents, but he extends plays really well. He doesn't run a lot, but he extends plays unbelievably well. And I think that is going to translate really well to the NFL, where he's going to keep his eyes upfield, move around in the pocket, get outside and make throws and plays, out of structure in a way that I don't think a lot of people give him credit for. So he's my QB1. Notably, it's not a massive gap over Ward, but every time if they're both available, I'm taking Sanders.
What have you made recently about Sanders? He sort of started to slip, and a lot of these industry experts we see bringing out their mock drafts. I mean, a few months ago, it was almost a lock that he was going to go to the Giants. Not really looking that way anymore. Why do you think that you've seen this kind of slip for Shedeur Sanders, and do you think that will actually take place during the draft?
So I'll answer the second question first. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to end up going much higher than the recent mock drafts are kind of predicting. I have noticed that. I think, there's some discussion, will he be available in the mid-20s? Could he slip out of the first round? I think was a headline I saw a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I think a lot of why is kind of his persona and the Deion Sanders effect of it's a different setup than every other quarterback really that we've seen come to the NFL, right? They don't have the big personality themselves in the same way, and they definitely don't have the Hall of Fame, dad talking about him here and there and all over the place that is a polarizing player in his own right. So I think that as much as people try to tell you that they don't factor that in, that's a big factor as to why, is that he's kind of getting pushed down because of his perceived kind of personality or difficultness. But from everybody that seems to have conversations with him or talk to him, he's very personal. he believes in himself. But like, what
Yeah.
NFL player isn't going to say they think they're the best at their position? Like, you know, like I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, I think it can become over the top if it gets too far, but that's the truth for everybody. And I don't think that he has any extra risk. I think he's just more like outspoken, and that kind of pushes people the wrong way. But I don't. I think if he gets out of the top 5 or 10 picks, I would be shocked. You know, it's possible he'll go like 6, so I don't want to say definitely inside the top 5, but I don't think a team's going to let him get past 10. Somebody would trade up if he's falling that much. I would imagine, at least, and I just frankly don't think he's going to fall.
Yeah, there's too many teams that need a quarterback for someone not to take a chance on him and trade up. And you'd mentioned the gap between Sanders and Ward isn't that big. Is it close enough that they're going back to back here, or are you going somewhere else?
It is. I mean, Cam Ward would be a slam dunk pick at 3 for me. You know, for all the things I like about Sanders, Ward does a lot of them, you know, very similarly. Really, the consistency with Ward has been my biggest question. I know he like flirted with the opportunity of coming out in last year's draft, and I think he was graded at like a early day 3 pick or late day 2 pick, and so he came back and like he improved, but a lot of what changed was the scenery around him. You know, Washington State to Miami is a big difference in skill gap, and he played better. Like, I don't want to take that away from him, but I don't think that he necessarily did a ton different at Miami than he did in some, you know, stints at Washington State. And so for me, the biggest concerns on Ward are his consistency, because he can kind of be hot and cold in, you know, in a single drive or in a game or from game to game. And he doesn't quite have the accuracy and like precision that Sanders does. And I think in the NFL, that's more important than anything because the windows are smaller and the decision, you know, time frame is shorter. So it's a notable gap, but it's not a big one. But for me, you know, Ward would be the easy pick here at 3.
Yeah, he seems pretty locked in to go to Tennessee at 1. What do you make of that landing spot? He's got Calvin Ridley there already. If I were Tennessee, I'd be going really, really desperately after a guy like Xavier Restrepo as well, who we know works well with Cam Ward already. You'd probably get him in the 3rd or 4th round. What do you think about that landing spot for Cam Ward?
I would feel better about it if I knew they were going to spend some earlier draft capital on skill position players. You know, I don't hate the landing spot, but it's not one that I get super excited about either. So I think that, you know, if you know that Tennessee is going to kind of invest in some weapons for him, and, you know, Restrepo would be a great option in the mid rounds. You know, Ridley's kind of been a player that's always been on the fringe of being good. At least like he's had some very productive years, but he's never been like, you know, oh great, I like Calvin Ridley's our wide receiver 1. It's more like he's a really good 2. And so I think that they would maybe need to invest a couple of wide receiver picks. You know, their tight end Okonkwo, he's fine. Like I don't dislike some of the pieces that they have there, but I feel like he's going to a team that doesn't have a lot around him to help him. And that's kind of more, you know, more alike what he had at Washington State than where, you know, if he went to a different team or if they draft some weapons, it would be more like a Miami version where he has like, you know, talented playmakers that he can throw to and not have to do everything himself.
Yeah, I always just love seeing these guys and where they go, and I can't wait for, you know, for the preseason, and just, yeah, it'll be real interesting to see what he does and what kind of Cam Ward that we get over at Tennessee. So he's locked in at pick 3. Who's right after him at pick 4? You have bigged up the quarterback class. I mean, do you dare go back there, or are we going somewhere else?
We are going to go somewhere else, and this is probably where the controversy will come in, or there'll be pushback. So I here right now would take a gamble and take Travis Hunter, and that is because I don't think there's any chance he won't play offense. Now, I think there's a chance that he won't play 100% of the time on offense. So I understand the risk, and as I said earlier, with the Genty pick, you could get Travis Hunter notably later than this. But I don't think that by the time the NFL draft comes around and by the time rookie drafts are happening, that you'll be able to get him later than this, because I think he's going to go somewhere that wants to use him at least like majority of the time or half of the time as a wide receiver. And we've seen, plenty of wide receivers be productive on, not 100% of the snaps. But I just don't think that there's a team that's going to spend that much draft capital on him and put him on one side of the ball and say, we'll sprinkle you in maybe on a few plays a game at wide receiver. Like, I just don't think that they would do it. Draft a different player if you only want a player that is going to play one side of the ball. Draft a guy that only plays one side of the ball. Like, it's something that I think I'm not quite entirely on an island about, but I know even Garrett, I've talked to him at Dynasty Nerds and some of the other guys, and they all are not as confident as I am. And so we've had some fun discussions just about like, I think he's going to be a DB, or like when he was listed at that for the combine initially, does that mean he's playing? And it's like, personally, I just don't see it. I don't know why you would limit somebody that much that is that good at both. We don't really know, so I don't want to pretend like I have a crystal ball and I can tell you for sure that this is what's going to happen. But I do think that it would be silly of an NFL team to say, with the third pick, the fourth pick, we're taking Travis Hunter and we're going to make you a corner. Like that just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Only the other thing I'll add, though, is that the landing spot could impact this if he went somewhere like the Giants, because then I think that, with Neighbors, they may be more inclined to say, we're going to play you a little more on defense than on offense because we have a really good young wide receiver. So there's a little bit of flexibility in there, but I think you should be drafting talent, and on that perspective, Hunter could be the top pick in any draft because he's, in my opinion, the most talented player. Fantasy wise, it's not quite, you don't need to be taking him that high, but I think here, by the time rookie drafts come around, you're going to see him going off the board pretty consistently.
What was his sort of percentage? Because obviously you went to the University of Colorado, you've seen a lot of Travis Hunter play in person. He doesn't play every snap, does like he does break sometimes, right? What kind of breakdown do you think he has?
I think he played probably like 90% or more of the snaps. Wow. So he comes off the field, but it's usually it's more often on offense, but it's very infrequent. And it's usually after he's made a big play and they're not hurrying up, or if he's ran down the field, he'll come off for one play, catch his breath, and go back in the next one. That was pretty much the only time he left the field. And I think the reason why is because on defense, you don't I don't mean to sound like you don't run, but you don't run as much as a corner on defense as you would on offense, running all of the routes. Especially if you're playing zone on a play or something, right? You're not chasing a guy around the field. It's a little easier to stay on the field on defense than it is on offense. But still, I don't have the number in front of me, but I think he played double the next highest wide receiver snaps or more in college. So he doesn't leave the field is pretty much what it comes down to.
What an amazing special talent. So it's going to be, I can't wait to see what happens with Travis Hunter. He's locked in at 4 for you, Tristan. Who's after him at 5?
For me, it's going to be Trevion Henderson here. He's my running back 2. Pretty easily in the class. I really like him. Until Genty kind of exploded, he came into the year Henderson as my running back 1. I think he didn't have as productive of a year as he has in some of his past seasons, but he stayed healthy all year, which was really big. And he was sharing the backfield, obviously, with Judkins, so he didn't need to be a workhorse, but he translates really well to the NFL. I saw something this morning saying that, he might be rumor has it that he could sneak into the end of the first round of the NFL draft, which would be surprising to me, but would be to the Chiefs. It wouldn't shock me, I guess, is the best way to put it. Like, it'd be a little bit of a surprise, but the talent, I think, is there, and the impact that he can have at the NFL level is, as a receiver and as a better rusher than people give him credit for. He's my RB2, and I'd be thrilled to get him in the middle of the first round here.
I think he's the perfect candidate to go to the Kansas City Chiefs. If there's not a tackle available at the Chiefs, I think that could be a really good pick, because one of the most underrated things about TreVeyon Henderson, and it's something we don't really talk about in fantasy, is he's an excellent pass blocker, which means he's going to be on the field. Yeah, he is superb, and the Chiefs need that extra bit of any kind of pass blocking the Chiefs could get. They'll take it right now, and I think TreVeyon Henderson can kind of kill two birds with one stone, with that improved run game and also that improved pass blocking. How excited would you be if he does end up at Kansas City?
Oh man, it would be tough to not want to take him earlier. I don't think I could. It would almost be the Edwards-Helaire situation all over again, where it was like a player, and that's a bad thing to say out loud because it didn't work out. But the difference here would be I'm very high on Henderson already. And so for him to go to a team like that, I still don't think it would push him over Genty, and it would be hard to move him up in a Superflex draft. People would probably draft him higher than the quarterbacks, just because the consensus seems to be, the quarterbacks aren't that good, which again, I don't agree with, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Henderson, sneaking ahead of quarterbacks in some of the Superflex drafts.
Yeah, it's certainly a previous guest on the show. I've done that already, so it wouldn't be surprising. There's no super consensus yet on these top sort of 6-7 players. They're usually the same 6-7 players, but they're always kind of swapped over, which is quite interesting. I wonder if you're going to keep on with the same sort of top 7 that we've seen so far with your pick at 6. Who are you going with?
I might. I guess I'm not sure. For me, I'm taking Hampton. Marion Hampton from North Carolina. My next pick is probably the other one that would be in that group. But Hampton, for me, it's a positional scarcity. Even though this is a very deep running back class, I think he is worthy of being picked above any the wide receivers or the tight ends that would go in this range. And I feel best about him as the next group of running backs. So it's Hampton. I think he could go in the first. He seems more likely right now to go in the first round of the NFL draft. Actually, I'm a Broncos fan living in Colorado, so I've seen him mocked to the Broncos a lot. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't shock me if they did that. I mean, they did strike out a little bit on their last North Carolina running back they drafted with Javonte Williams, but that shouldn't stop them from taking a good player again. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up, right in this range as well, if he sneaks into the first round of the NFL draft. But he's the most physical of these 3 running backs for sure. I think that Judkins, not to get too far ahead, but I think he and Judkins are similar in a lot of ways in that they're super physical running backs. But I think Hampton's just a little more of a complete running back.
That's something I'm definitely keeping an eye on, is who are the Broncos going to take to be running back. Just, Sean Payton, we know he's probably going to be looking for his Alvin Kamara, kind of like this do-it-all kind of running back. Do you think Hampton has the pass-catching ability to do that, or do you think he'll have to be paired up with somebody else?
I think it would be more of the, he would be the running tandem on a Sean Payton offense, kind of like we've seen at times, more so than the Kamara, which is why, personally, if the Broncos take a running back, I would want them to take Henderson over Hampton, because I think Henderson would be much more that style of running back that you want to see in a Sean Payton offense. But I think that it sounds like they're more likely, in the Hampton game. And it's not like Sean Payton doesn't like a good, strong running back. So he's kind of been able to create offenses with different combinations of running backs. Obviously, Kamara is a very special player in his own right. So if you get a player that can do both, that's even better. But we've seen, Peyton have a kind of combination backfield of a Thunder and Lightning, or however you want to put it.
Yeah, we're running out of like Sonic and Knuckles, Thunder and Lightning. We're running out of like double ups here. We'll have to maybe think of a few more. But you kind of teased it earlier. You said the next player is probably the one everyone's thinking. Is that Ted McMillan?
It is. Yep. And he's most people's wide receiver 1 in the class. He's my second wide receiver because I consider Travis Hunter a wide receiver. I think that like getting McMillan at 7 shows you how deep this class is. And I think it's interesting because there's been a lot of kind of chatter, it feels like, for the last year or so, that this class is not as good as some others. The running backs are good, but there's not a lot else. And I just don't get it. Like, I think McMillan's a really good wide receiver. Hunter is a great wide receiver. Some of the other top receivers, are also very good. The top tier talent isn't quite as deep, but the second tier of players at pretty much every position in this draft for fantasy is better than a lot of years you'll see. So to me, like, Ted McMillan at 7 is a great value. I would be thrilled, going into this year, if you told me I could get him at 7, I would be like, thrilled to have that spot. If you have a top 7 pick, like, you've got to feel really good that you're getting one of these players. Like, maybe you're not, maybe if Hunter doesn't go in there, you'd have to get into the top 6 to get one of them. But I wouldn't be mad at having the 7th pick and being able to take Travis Hunter, for example. I'd be thrilled there. So it kind of depends, but I think Ted McMillan is he has everything you need to be a wide receiver 1. It's going to kind of depend on where he goes. He's plenty fast for his size. He's not the most overly physical receiver, but I'm not overly worried about that. You see a lot of Mike Evans comps, and I don't know that he's quite as physical as Mike Evans is. He's similar build, so I can kind of see why people go to that route. But, I've seen him, like, he tore up Colorado a couple years ago, so against Travis Hunter for a good amount of that game. So he can go against top tier talent and still produce. He gets in and out of his breaks well enough for a big player. Like, I think he's a pretty safe pick. Now, I might feel a little less confident if he went to a landing spot I didn't love, but I think that he's a pretty safe player for some of these, big-bodied receivers that kind of can give people a scare. I'm not really worried about that for him. It's more just I'm curious where he's going to go and how the offense is going to be structured around a big receiver, and how is their passing game and things like that, more so than I'm worried about his ability to produce.
What do you think about, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's he's pretty famous. He's notorious for only ever doing one mock draft on NFL.com. He had Ted McMillan, I think, falling out of the first round, or I think going maybe in the second to last pick. That's never going to happen, surely.
I don't think so. I would be really surprised, because I think you're going to probably get 3 or maybe 4 wide receivers in the first round. And I would be shocked if a team doesn't have him inside any team doesn't have him inside their top 3 or 4 wide receivers. So it'd be pretty surprising to me. I think the combine with, Matthew Golden tearing it up, that launched his draft capital up. So there were a lot of guys that kind of performed well, and McMillan didn't do a lot. So it kind of hurt him in that way. But I would be surprised. I don't know. I think he might drop out of the top 10, 15 picks, but I don't really care. That almost helps his landing spot more than it hurts him. Because if he goes to a better team with a better offense and passing game, I feel better about that than if he got put on a team that, I don't feel good about their offense. And I'm like, great, they have a good player, but who's going to throw him the ball or something like that? So I'm not worried about, I think, 15 to 20 is probably around the range I'd expect. And if he went earlier, I don't think that's a bad pick. But if he went much later than that, I'd be a little surprised if he was falling.
He's probably just the way that the last sort of 4 drafts have gone. He's probably going to fall into the Eagles, and everyone's going to be like, "How did that happen?" And they'll
Yeah.
just swoop him up and just like they've done the last like 3, 4 first round picks. You just doesn't make any sense how they got all that talent. So hopefully that won't happen, and Tevin McMillan will go anywhere but the Eagles. But he's locked in at pick 7 for you. Who's right after him at pick 8?
Yeah, so this is kind of a tough spot for me because there's several players that I would consider here, but there's not one that I would feel I need to take here. Um, I I would my pick is Judkins, and that is almost entirely based off of positional scarcity again. So I know we talked a lot. Well, we and everybody has talked a lot about this running back class, and it is really good. I think that there's like 7 guys or so that could have been in the running back 1 discussion last year. So that's, at least for me, that would it's a significantly better class. But I have those top, like it used to be the top 5 for me, including Judkins, and he's kind of like shifted down to where he's in his own little semi tier where I'm pretty much always taking him 5th out of the others. But I think he's better than the next group. So I don't know. Like, he did well. He showed he can receive. He's a physical runner. He's a lot of the things you look for in a running back. But I also I feel more unsure about him based off of where he ends up than I do with any of the other running backs. And so at this point in not knowing where they're going, I feel like he's kind of has to be in this like later half of the first round, just because there's more circumstances that could come up where I might feel worried about drafting him over the other guys where I think their talent is going to work in pretty much any scenario or scheme.
Yeah, you're right in agreement with me. Just a few days ago, I tweeted out my sort of running back tiers, and I had a Gentry in a tier of his own. I had Henderson and Hampton in the same tier. Then I had Judkins in a tier of his own as well, where he's just that separation between them is quite clear to me. So I'm in complete agreement with you about Judkins. Who's right after him at pick number 9?
Luther Burden III is my next pick, and I think he at the combine showed enough. He ran, I think it was like 4.48, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was a 4.4 something, which had a lot of I was curious because his 2024 season was not as good as his 2023 season, and so was he injured? Is he not as fast? What was going on? That part isn't entirely answered, but at least the metrics showed that he still is a very explosive and fast player. And so I think that I'm trusting enough what I saw in 2023 and in glimpses in 2024 to think that getting him here at this pick is a very good value. Again, kind of like going into the year, if you told me that I'd be getting Burden here at 9, I would be shocked. I would say like, what idiot drafted those first 8 picks? But it's me. So yeah, like I'd be pretty happy about getting him. Like, I would love to see him go to one of these kind of creative offensive minds that in the NFL, like the Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan. I mean, the easy comp for him is Deebo Samuel, excuse me. So the 49ers don't exactly need a wide receiver, but somebody that wants to have a player like that, like the Broncos, honestly, wouldn't be a bad, exciting spot for me. It would be exciting. It wouldn't be bad because, all the reports about Peyton wanting the Joker player, like Burden is a very, very dynamic, versatile athlete that you could use in a lot of ways. So I think that he might be one of those guys that in a couple of years, you're like, wow, he slipped further than he should have. Like, you got him where? You got who went out or before him? Like, that's kind of the way I feel about Burden, is that he just kind of didn't exactly he didn't help his stock with his 2024 season, but he just kind of simmered and a lot of people jumped him. And so by doing that, he ended up becoming a pretty good value.
Yeah, it's not quite as disastrous as like if you cast your mind back a few years when we had a guy like Keyshawn Butte who was a rocket one year and then fell completely flat the next. He didn't quite have as disastrous a season as that, I wouldn't say, right, Tristan?
No, definitely not. I mean, it was just his 2023 season was similarly as dynamic as, but his follow-up year was just like mediocre rather than bad. And so I think that it was like, what, and the difference also, Missouri's offense to LSU's offense, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't necessarily expect the same production out of it. And so maybe you give him a little more of a pass, even if you're not trying to subconsciously to say like, well, he put up okay numbers for Missouri this year and we've seen what he can do. Right. And like Butte had that kind of like rocket trajectory. He went up and then right back down. And, that was disappointing from, the perspective of thinking that he could be really good, but I still feel much better about Burden than a player like Booty.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. So he's in it. Pick 9. We got 3 left of the first round, Tristan. Where are you going to go with your first one?
This is tough. I'm going to go Emeka Egbuka, and that is because I think he's probably the safest pick you can take in this range. I don't know. It's hard to talk about him because I feel like I just sound like bored when I talk about him because he's just like safe, smooth, good, consistent, does the thing like. I don't know that he'll ever be quite the wide receiver one that some of these other receivers, even after him, have the like ceiling to be. But like, I don't really care. Like he'd be a guy that like I'd be thrilled if I'm a contending team, picking in this range to pick him and then be like, great, I might be able to have this guy in my starting lineup in the playoffs the first year, right? Like Lad McConkey, different style of player in a lot of ways, but like he came in, you knew what he could do, he produced. I see
Yeah.
a similar kind of thing for Egbuka. If he gets into a team that is like, we want you to be like a slot receiver that plays inside and outside a little bit, but primarily in the slot, and we're gonna, get you touches, like I'd be thrilled if I get a player like that, at 10, where I feel confident that he's going to have usability on my team right away and down the road, more so than kind of a like swing for the fences and hoping you don't miss.
Do you think he might be a victim of an overcorrection here? Because almost every guest I've had, and I completely agree, think that he's going to come in and he's going to hit the ground running and be really safe and reliable. But if he kind of goes down the route of like a Jackson Smith and Jigba, where it kind of takes him a while to get going, he has a slow first season. Do you think people are just going to wash their hands of Egbuka completely, and there's going to be a wild overreaction?
If that happens, I kind of hope they do because I'll try to scoop him
Yeah, me
up
too.
everywhere I can. Because like it does seem like people are demanding more quicker, and especially of a player that you think is pro ready. So if a pro ready player doesn't produce, like I could easily see people being like, I don't know, that's what I was worried about him. I'm kind of out, and you might be able to scoop him up for a discount. But I'm not like, to me, that's more of what we saw with his former teammate there with Jackson Smith and Jigba, that he didn't have as much of the opportunity, but once he got it, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, that's what we saw. So I would kind of be excited in a weird way if that happened and be like, sweet, I'm going to end up with a lot of Egbuka on a lot of teams, and people in a few years are going to be mad that they traded him away for the hope of getting a player that could turn into this.
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to be the exact same for sure. 2 picks left. Where are you going with your penultimate pick of the first round?
Man, this whole range for me is kind of changes depending on the draft that I do, or at least that's kind of what it feels like. So
Mm.
for me, it's going to be Caleb Johnson, and that is because he's really the last running back in I think the first round range. I think you'll see some running backs sneak into the first round in some drafts. Personally, I wouldn't put any others up here. And again, if you're drafting at the end of a first round, not assuming you haven't traded for the pick, you're probably a contending team. And, that's the kind of teams that I would be looking at running backs for. And I think Caleb Johnson, he kind of underwhelmed after the season, like through the pre-draft process, and fell to here. But I'd be pretty happy, depending on, the kind of scheme he goes to and draft capital that he gets. Like, I still think he's going to go, like, I don't know that he'll fall into the third round. He might, but I don't know that third round draft capital for a running back is still really good. So if he goes to it, especially if he goes to a team with like a path to either starting or like a big role pretty quickly, that would be, I'd be thrilled to have him here at 11.
And with Johnson, I've got him in his own little tier as well as Judkins, weirdly enough, where it's just that extra separation between the others. Do you see him?
Yeah. It's just that, like, he's a nick below Judkins, but he's a like half step above anybody else. And so it feels like he kind of just, like, by default gets slotted into this spot. And I don't dislike it, but it's also not like, I'm not overly thrilled to have, like, to be picking him, but I don't mean to be like dismissive either. Like, I'd be pretty happy. Yeah. Like, again, he could have been running back 1 last year. Like, easily getting him at 11, you feel, when you put it in that perspective, you're pretty thrilled by getting him here.
Yeah, definitely. So we got one more pick of the first round. Who's following Caleb Johnson and going at the back end of the first?
So I have 3 players that I'm considering here. They're all different positions, and none of them are running back. So the picks I'm considering are Warren, Golden, and Dart.
Yep.
And I think that, so it's not going to be Dart. I think that by the time the NFL draft comes around, that might look a little silly, because I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up in the middle of the first round just because he's a quarterback. So if that were the case, then I probably would want to have taken him, where you get a chance to. I'm also not going to take Warren, so I'm going to take Matthew Golden. I don't want to sound like I don't like Tyler Warren, but I firmly believe that tight end in this class is very deep at a starting level. And so I don't like to overdraft or draft tight ends at their value for the top level guys, because you can get really good tight ends in the middle and late rounds of pretty much every draft. There's going to be 1 or 2 guys that go in the 3rd or 4th round of a rookie draft that end up having wide or tight end 1 seasons at some point, or at least it feels that way. Like, maybe the data doesn't quite support it, but it feels like there's always kind of that later round tight end that you're like, wow, that guy fell, and now I wish I had him. And so for that reason, I just let somebody else take a tight end. Like, I don't dislike Tyler Warren or Loveland. I just don't want to be the one that drafts them. But for the pick I did make, Matthew Golden, like, I don't know that he'll be available here either. Because I think after, his combine performance and probably his draft capital, he's going to end up being, closer to that, like, Judkins pick is where he'll probably start coming off of the board. So I probably won't end up with much Matthew Golden on my team, or teams, but he's more than just a speed receiver. And I think that because he ran so fast, people are, like, oh, he's another speed demon from Texas. And, like, technically that's true, but I think he's more of a well-rounded receiver than just a little fast guy. Like, he's not as little, right? Like, he's similarly as fast, but he's not the, like, 5'11", 170, 165 player that other guys are like. Worthy was, I think, 5'10" even, maybe, at least I don't remember. It's funny, not to go off on a tangent too much, but I was at the combine each of the last 2 years, and before, like, during the media session, so before Worthy ran his 40, he was kind of standing off to the side where I happened to be standing, and, like, I just kind of looked at him, and I was like, he is just, like, you don't see that and think NFL football player. Like just
Yeah.
very, very like slender. And obviously, world-class speed. He's proved that he can play. I don't mean it as a slight at all. It was just a surprise to see like that build and then be like, wow, okay. I see why there are some concerns. Now, if you can stay healthy, you're great. But Matthew Golden, on the other side, he's built much sturdier, and so he runs multiple routes. He wasn't just a over the top, go deep and we'll throw it down there to you guy. So he can do a lot. I think that he's one of these guys that kind of rose through a combine performance that made people relook at him and realize, oh, we were kind of missing, kind of a lot about a player that we just kind of thought was, fine, but not having, top level potential. So I don't know. I'd be happy with getting Golden here. I don't think I would be able to get him here in most drafts. So it's kind of hard to project that, but yeah. I think he's deserving of being in the first round because he's probably going to be a first round pick in a couple weeks.
It is strange for me with Golden. Obviously, I've been doing these mock drafts for a very long time now. Since I think October is when we started these. Matthew Golden was not a name that you heard a lot. He would maybe go back end of the second round, and then the combine happened, and now all of a sudden he's going 8, 9, 10, 11, first round lock pretty much. I've got alarm bells about that, right? I don't know. I just think that's like maybe too much of an adjustment, or maybe you're right. Maybe it is people going back and re-looking at the tape because of that. Do you ever get that like sort of worry about a player that rises so much mainly due to a combine performance?
Absolutely. I mean, I would much rather take guys that fall a little than than have to take the guy that's like, skyrocketing. So it's a concern for me that like, I think I had him higher than Isaiah Bond by about week 10 or so of the college season. Cause I periodically on Dynasty Nerds will post my updated positional rankings for the upcoming rookie class. So I'd have to go back and look exactly, but coming into the year, Bond was higher and Golden was like a consideration. So I don't like what you're saying matches perfectly with kind of my perception and my, my personal opinion even. And then a little quicker than, definitely during the season, realizing that Bond wasn't really doing it and Golden made me be like, okay, maybe I need to kind of understand what's happening here. And then, they flip-flop spots, but they were still like lower than this in my rankings, right? And so that's kind of the part where Golden is steadily inched up. And I feel like he's deserving of it, but I also feel a little apprehensive about being the person that takes him. So I don't know that that's exactly fair, but it's kind of the reality of my view on it is that like, if not that you're going to be doing a rookie draft before the college season, but if you did, you would be getting him, like you said, late in the second, in the third round. And so a guy that jumps that high, you have to at least have some level of apprehension about. And so, he might be another guy that I'll let somebody else take than really jump for. But if he were to fall a little, then I might feel better about taking him.
Yeah, absolutely. So that rounds out the first round. We're going to speed run through the second round here, Tristan. Can you give me a block of 4 players here? The 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and 2-4, and then we'll zone in on one guy to chat about.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2-1 is going to be Dart. 2-2 is going to be Devin Neal from Kansas, and then 2-3 will be Tyler Warren, and 2-4 will be Colston Loveland.
All right. Anyone in particular that you want to speak about there?
I think for me, I'd like it would be Devin Neal. I mean, I kind of talked about Tyler Warren. The analysis is basically the same for Loveland, and I kind of mentioned Dart. So for Devin Neal, I think that he is, I don't think that he's going this high probably in many mock drafts. Maybe he's starting to now, but I think that I'm higher on Devin Neal than a lot of people that I interact with. and I think that he's just a really well-rounded back. Like, one of the guys that will probably sneak into this draft would be Cam Skattebo, and people seem to love him, and I would take Devin Neal over him 100 out of 100 times. And I just think that he is just a more, like, I don't know. I trust his ability more than I trust the style of player that Cam Skattebo is. And so, like, he's a good receiver. He's been productive. I think it's 3,000-yard years, maybe I think his first year was just shy of it. So, like, very productive.
Three in a row. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like, good receiver, pretty good in pass pro, like, not just a dump off screen guy, but can kind of, make guys miss. He can run over people. Like, his athleticism metrics tested pretty well. Like, I just feel pretty good about Devin Neal as a player overall. And so I think that he's somebody that might be pushed down a little in rankings based off of other guys moving up again. And I just think that he's deserving of a little more praise than he's currently getting.
My favorite stat about Devin Neal, if we look at his 2023 statistics compared to his 2024, in 23, he had 203 carries, 24, he had 219. In 23, he had 1,280 yards. In 24, 1,266 yards. Then if you look at the receptions, in 23, he had 25. In 24, he had 24. And again, both them going for around the same amount of yardage. You want consistency. Devin Neal's your guy, right?
Exactly. Like, he might not have the ceiling of some of these other players, but I feel like, kind of like I do about Igbuka, about Devin Neal, like on a different level, but a similar, like, I just feel safe and good about him being able to play at the NFL level. I've seen, some rumors about the Broncos taking him if they don't go running back in the first round, and that would be a really exciting spot. So, I think he might inch his way up a little later, but I really like Devin Neal.
Love it, love it, love it. So let's go into your next block of 4 players ranging from the 2.5 all the way up to the 2.8. Who you got?
Yeah, so let me see here. Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. This is tough. Let me
see. This is why the show's called the Dynasty Hotseat. Tristan.
It is, yeah.
It's trying to capture the people when you're on the clock and everyone's going like, I don't know, what should I do? Who should I take? This is the whole reason I started the show.
No, I love it. It's exactly the spot that I start feeling like it's kind of hard. Like, both of those picks are guys I would take in this range, but I'm not honestly sure which order. But I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, and so I want to. So Jalen Royals, Utah State, and then let me see if there's somebody else here. Just scrolling through my names, I've been trying to mark them all off.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna go a little bit off of maybe the beaten path as well, and take Trevor Etienne from Georgia.
So yeah, Trevor Etienne, a name that hasn't really come up a lot, but he's a guy that I thought was coming out when he was at Florida. I thought he looked really, really good, and then obviously transferred to Georgia. I thought it was going to be wheels up for Etienne. Didn't quite work out as well, but I still think he's a real solid back. So I like to see him here. If you don't mind, Tristan, would you mind focusing in on Trevor Etienne?
No, he would have been my pick to talk about anyway, so that is perfect. I have him ranked as my RB7. That's what I was going to check, is exactly where I have him. I kind of what you said, like, he seemed like he was about to just, launch his draft stock to the moon when he went to Georgia, and that didn't happen. Part of it was he had some off the field like issues. He got suspended, I think, for one game or half a game for driving incident. But he, similarly to Devin Neal, he does a lot of things very well, right? Like, he he was a kick returner for Georgia or for Florida, so he has like elusiveness and speed. He's got plenty of power. He can like be a receiver out of the backfield on, you know, not a full array of routes, but enough routes to be usable. I think that he has a chance to go, like, you know, in the third round of the NFL draft and be a surprise third round pick to some people. And if that's the case, I think the middle of the second round is like probably the latest you'll get him. Or at least the latest I'd want to let him fall. Maybe he'd go a little later. I'm in a draft. We just created a startup draft where we for Dynasty nerds with all Dynasty nerds like writers and Rich and Garrett and all of the, like, everybody is in it. It's a crazy format, but we do 2 rounds of the rookie draft before the NFL draft. So it's really cool to see. And I took Trevor Etienne. I had the last 2 picks in the second round, and he was available there, and I took him. And like, you know, it might backfire. He might not get the draft capital I'm expecting, but I think the talent, it warrants it. And so, you know, if he falls into the early part of day 3, but on a favorable, you know, situation, I'll still be happy. If he, you know, falls out of that range and it makes me look bad, like, so be it. But we've still seen people that have the talent work their way to the top. So I don't know. I think that, like, his biggest concern for me is his top end speed, but I think that he has enough for a running back. You know, we don't need running backs to all run in the 4.4s to be successful in the NFL, right? Like, it's funny when it's a player that people like, if they run slow, they say it's okay, they don't run. We don't need the top end speed. But if it's a player people seem not to like, they say he's not fast enough. And like, it kind of depends on their play style. It kind of depends on like where they go and all of that. But I do think that, you know, Trevor Etienne might surprise some people come this time next year and be a name that people are wanting on their dynasty rosters.
Have you seen the amazing photo of, I think it was last Christmas, a young Florida Gators fan got given an ETN jersey for his Christmas present right after, like the day before he had agreed to trade to Georgia. So he's like holding up the jersey, looking really upset. It's a fantastic.
No, I haven't. I'll have to look for that. That's the heartbreak is probably both heartbreaking and hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's locked in. Nice to chat about Etienne. You got one more run of 4 here. Who's going to be your last 4 players to wrap up the draft?
Yeah, so this is the range where it starts being kind of like, you know, pick your guy. I'll put the other player I picked in the end of that second round in here, which is Ty Felton from Maryland. I like Ty Felton a lot. He tested insanely well for a player that doesn't seem to have much being talked about. Like, I think he ran in the 4.39 or 4.38 40. His like broad jump, all of the things were in the top like 3 at the positions at the combine, and yet no one see. And he was incredibly productive. So he wasn't one of these just like never did anything and then crazy athletes. Alec Aomanor will be in this range also for me. I will go ahead and say Harold Fannin. Man, the last pick. It is. You are right. This is where the rubber meets the road, and you kind of have to do it. I'll go Xavier Restrepo here.
Nice.
I think the player that I'll talk about is Ty. Well, I guess I kind of did talk about Ty Felton. So I don't know if there's one of these 4 you want me to talk about more than the other, but I think that, you know, this is the range where I actually start wanting to take tight ends. So Fannin would be in this range for me if he's available. I love Rondé Gadsden. I just want him to go somewhere that believes in him as a like receiving tight end and not trying to make him a like blocking and receiving tight end. Restrepo feels very safe as well. You mentioned the Tennessee landing spot. That would be fantastic if they also have Ward. Ao Manor, he's probably most famous for just dominating Colorado against Travis Hunter last year. So I was at that game. It was cold. Buffs were up 29-0 at halftime, and we were like, when do we leave? Like, do we leave early? This is getting ugly. When are they going to pull the starters? And then the second half happened. And as a fan and, and as a person that pays attention for Dynasty, it was heartbreaking and impressive, right? I was like, this guy, I knew his name just from playing college fantasy and C2C leagues, but that's about all I knew about him. And I was like, who is this guy? And, looked him up. He was all over Sports Center and every, video thing everywhere. And he just tore it up. And the biggest concern I have with him is the consistency, because he kind of disappeared at times too. But you can coach technique, and if you can get players to buy into effort, which I think he does. He just kind of has the tendency to kind of fade away at times. The talent was there, and so that he would be a great late second round pick. I love Ty Felton. He might not be anywhere close to this high come rookie draft season if he doesn't get drafted on day 2. He might be a mid to late round 3 guy, but he'll be somebody I'll be scooping up probably everywhere I can, unless for some reason his draft capital is super low. Just because he was incredibly productive at Maryland. He tested really well. He interviewed really well. It seems like he understands football really well, which doesn't always matter. If you're good at catching a ball and you're a receiver, that can also be plenty, right? You don't need it.
Yeah.
But it's cool to hear players really talk about understanding the position in a way that not everybody seems to. So I really like Ty Felton. So he would probably be my favorite of these 4.
Absolutely love it. And that does wrap up the end of the second round. Tristan, we're not going to let you go just yet, because everyone's favorite topic is these sleeper players, right? These guys you can get in the 3rd or even the 4th, or even guys that might go undrafted completely. Do you have anyone on the top of your mind that you're like, this is a guy you should all look out for in the later rounds?
He's kind of moving up a little, so this one might not fit as well anymore. But Kyle Williams from Washington State, the wide receiver, he's been he's been also insanely productive and kind of gaining a little bit of buzz of late. So he would be a guy. Dante Thornton, the Tennessee wide receiver, big, fast guys scare me, because especially Tennessee ones, because they seem to have a lot of them and then they, don't do much. But if there is going to be one that, you want to take a risk on late in the draft, that's the time to do it. And he's got all the tools. I love some of the Buffs players, but Will Shepherd, the Vanderbilt transfer, he's, I don't even know that he's in a lot of top 50 overall dynasty rookie rankings. I think he could end up surprising people as just being a consistent, possession style receiver more than a massive dynasty role, but a usable dynasty role. Damian Martinez, now also of Miami from Oregon State. He was super productive at Oregon State and kind of didn't change much at Miami, but kind of got overshadowed by the Cam Ward, transcendence to wonderful this year, which kind of helps keep his value low. Those are kind of some guys for me. Tight end, like I said, that one's kind of tough because there's just it's the toughest position to project, I think.
Yeah.
And they 5th, 6th, 7th round guys can be kind of steals. Probably my favorite tight end prospect a little later in this draft is Luke Lachey from Iowa. But, saying I like an Iowa tight end isn't exactly a controversial thing to say. So, but he, I think he could be one of those, 5th round tight ends that ends up being pretty productive in the NFL.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me at all. The tight end out of Iowa proving it in the NFL is that's happened before. I'm sure it will definitely happen again. And Tristan, sadly, that does bring us to the end of the show. Just wanted to thank you so much again for coming on. Can you just remind everyone watching, where can they find all your great work online?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It's always fun to talk about fantasy football, and my dog's gotten tired of hearing me talk to him, so it's nice to talk to other people about it. But you can find all of my work on Dynasty Nerd's website. We've been posting a bunch of rookie write-ups. So we have little profiles for about 50 of the players. We tried to pick, the top guys, and then a handful of kind of sleeper level players or mid-round picks. So you can find, any other articles I've written there. You can go back and look at all of the ways my rankings for this class has changed throughout the year. So that's, if you're curious to see where players came from or fell off from, that's an option. And then I'm on, I still call it Twitter because I will never remember to call it X, but you can find me on there. My handle here at the Tristan Cook. So, I'm always happy to talk about football. Feel free to ask any questions, give me your opinion. If you hate what I have to say on somebody, I enjoy people talking about things they agree or don't agree, because that's what makes Dynasty fun, is people having different opinions. So that's where you can find me, and check out some of the stuff on Dynasty Nerds, and tell me all of the players I'm wrong on. Cam Scadaboo will be the top of the list, I assume. He's always the one that people say I'm way too low on, and if I am, I am, but I'm not going to just adjust because I don't want to be wrong. So
love it. Absolutely love it. So thank you once again. And thanks, of course, everyone watching at home. It says it down there. If you've not already, make sure you like and subscribe. Hell, leave a comment. If you never left a comment on a video before, would love to hear from you. What do you think about this draft? Who are some of your sleeper players as well? That'd be great to know. Brilliant stuff, Tristan. Thank you once again. Thank you again at home. And remember, for anything Dynasty you want to know, you want to keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.